continue to share your screen?
There you go.
All right. So then, welcome everybody. Welcome to the to the TAC LFTT TAC meeting this week. Um, Please be aware of our antitrust policy notice if you have never heard of it. Well, this is the page to look it up. Make a screenshot of what you see here right now. Furthermore, if we scroll down a little bit, we would like to welcome everyone here on this call. If you are joining for the first time, don't hesitate to use the raise your hand button and um, just be nice to each other. I think that's a nice thing to do here in this case. The usual announcements. So every Friday we have our weekly newsletter going out, which reaches hundreds of developers. If you have any topic, any interesting hot news you would like to share with the community, leave a comment here and we will make sure that this goes into the newsletter. Moreover, we have currently the call for the LFTT mentorship program proposal submitting going on. You can still submit your project proposals until March 13th. I believe this is Friday next week, if I'm not completely wrong. So if you have a thrilling idea and want to run a mentorship program, don't hesitate to submit any proposal. We will review them and get to you back with some feedback on that. And also, it seems that there is a playlist now published with the recordings of the maintainer days, which were happening in the end of January. Pretty cool thing. Highly recommended for everyone to look into that and see what happened there in the past. All right. For the annual reports, I think, well, do we usually discuss this here in this? I don't think so. Let's see. However,
Yeah,
overdue reports, this is maybe interesting to mention. So we have the Aurora annual report due already February the 12th. So I don't know, has
so
someone reached out to them? Oh, there's a
Matthew, this is Diane. On the annual reports, today we have someone here from the Anon-Creds community, Stephen Curran, and so we wanted to discuss that today. And we usually go through these annual reports if the people are here and if the reviews have been done by the people here. So I would like to make sure that we get to the Anon-Creds because Stephen did come last week and we didn't get to his topic, and he's here again today.
great. Yeah, let's first of all, hi Stephen. Thanks for joining again. Haven't seen you here in a while. I think we will come to that basically as the core part of the reviews.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else I forgot so far? And anyone want to mention something? All right. Oh, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. I was just wondering about what the I couldn't quite remember the process for assessing the annual reviews of the annual report. So the indie annual report is up, and I've done a review of that report, which is up as a separate PR. Do we kind of present through each annual review on one of these calls? Is that right? Hi, Dan.
Yeah, hi. So in the past, what we've done is once the assigned reviewers have reviewed the report and reached out with any questions, we go through them, have the lead reviewer go through their review in this TAC meeting. And so
Yeah.
that's the Anon-Cred one has been ready for a little while. So if you're ready with yours, we can do that. We don't have, and then everybody has to do a review, click on the GitHub thing and review them themselves and ask any questions they have. But this is sort of the forum for reviewing those annual reports.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah, that rings a bell from last year.
Yeah, so that's what we should be doing today if we can. And since not everybody is here and we don't have quorum, this is being recorded, so they can listen to it and we can have conversations next week about approving them. But I
Yeah.
know the Anon Creds one is ready for moving forward.
Yeah, I think the Indie annual review probably is as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so but I'm very happy for that to come after the Anoncrids, especially because someone's joined the call from Anoncrids.
Yep.
All right, great. So we keep this for the core part of this meeting, then those two reports, the discussion. All right, let's quickly go through the standard list here, and then we switch to the core part. All right, the Solang annual report also due by February 12th. Firefly annual report due by February 26th. Since we are already in March, well, all those reports, including the Basel report, they're overdue. Again, my question, did anyone reach out to one of those listed reports and asking what causes the delay or if the reports are soon available? David?
I did reach out to the Solang maintainers yesterday. I will double check. I don't think I saw a response back yet, but I did ping them on Discord.
All right, great.
And I believe Hendrik has reached out to most of them that are overdue, as well as he's the vice chair, and that's on his to-do list. So I'm pretty sure I heard him say that he had done that last week.
Perfect. Cool. Then let's see next week if we get some response, or ideally the report itself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then for the upcoming reports, so today we have the Minokawa report. And in the next week, the credible and the trust over IP report, essentially. For the labs summary, so there is currently one open proposal in the labs, the proof of process lab, where I saw Diana, you were having a question to the author of the proposal.
Yeah.
I was not in the tech call last week, but as I understood that this project proposal was also presented last week at the tech. So I would
Yes.
kindly ask everyone who hasn't yet had a chance to look into that proposal to have a look, see if this sounds like an interesting lab proposal to move forward. If you see any complications, I, for instance, asked a question about licensing, as the project they built on top of seemed to have a pending patent. Not really sure if how that will impact the licensing under Apache 2. So there are some clarification I think would be nice. But other than that, for me personally, it sounds like an interesting lab proposal.
Yeah, I read through some of it as well, and it just wasn't clear to me if this was an individual making a lab proposal or if there was a group of people who were working on this. I tried to go down the wormhole of all the documentation and links, but I couldn't. It seems very individual, so I would just like them to come back with an answer to the question here before giving. And I don't think that limits somebody, and an individual, and I would just like to know. And that was the question that I had here, is that I couldn't tell from
Right.
that. And I know they had spoken to Hart in the past, so maybe Hart Montgomery might have some insights as well as where this fits in the stack.
Yeah, I also got the same impression that this is a single developer wanted to, work on something and share this with the community, and also in order to collaborate or invite other people to join in.
Mhm.
David, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't lower it from earlier, but I think you're right. I don't see that Hart is here, but I believe that's what he had said about this. It's an individual, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this should not be a blocker in order to create a lab.
No,
Uh,
no, not at all. I just I didn't
right.
see anybody else when I dove into the all the linked documents, and it looked like it was an individual thing there too. So just wanted to confirm
Right.
that, but I have no objection to it becoming a lab.
Matthew.
Yeah, I was going to add this as a comment to the PR as well, but I thought worth raising here just while we're on. I wasn't quite sure of the relationship between the lab and the pre-existing repository it referenced, the Witness D, which it says is going to be the basis for the reference implementation to be contributed. I wasn't quite sure if that meant contributed as part of this lab or contributed separately as a future kind of reference implementation of this lab. I found that a little confusing. I can add that as a comment to the PR. I just wondered if anyone else had read that and had a better understanding of it than I did.
I completely
Yeah,
missed
thanks for
that.
this comment.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
add it as a comment. That would be great.
Sure.
All right. Any other comment regarding any open labs issues? I think this is the only current proposal. All right. So then the core part of our session today is the annual report. And so then we start with, what did we say? With anocrats.
Yeah, if you want to click
Welcome,
on that,
Stephen.
and I'll just hopefully it'll render. And if you go into make the beautiful view of it, if you haven't read the review, my review yet, it's there on there, and or the report itself, and then very kindly Stephen Curran answered most of my questions in this in the review. So if you go to my review, I'll just sort of walk through it, and then we can let Stephen and I have a little conversation about what happens next. AnonCreds is an incubator project at the moment. Using LFX, it does get a healthy score, though in the commentary below, you'll see that probably the AnonCreds V2 work is lacking some resources. You don't have to scroll, just I could talk through this. So there is an issue about the AnonCreds V2 work, which has got a stable user base, lots of and stable maintainers and contributors, is doing well and is healthy, but AnonCreds V2 is kind of on hold, waiting until the ZK landscape kind of mellows out and gets defragmented in a leader, and some momentum comes into power, into being. There is some issues around the V2 work that the main contributor has moved on, probably due to this holding pattern that they're in. So I had asked for some clarification from Stephen, and we can chat through that. And if you go down a little bit to the outstanding task stuff there, this is V2 is a significant and very interesting undertaking from my perspective. We've incorporated AnonCreds V1, but as the ZK stuff comes into fruition, it'll be interesting to see whether the AnonCreds V2 piece can find the resourcing and a place in that stack to be there. So from my point of view, at this point, I'm seeing the AnonCreds V1 as a stable, mature project, which may probably warrants being graduated and moving forward. But the V2 stuff really is waiting for, as we all are, for a lot of things to clear up in that ecosystem. So I don't see any real roadblocks to maybe giving, if they request it, getting graduation here. But I do wanted to flag that the initial healthy response from LFX, once again, was not really accurately reflecting the community. So I just wanted to raise that red flag again. And then Stephen responded, if you go down to Stephen's comments, with some good feedback on this. And we've had some back and forth around the Longfellows project, which may or may not end up in the Linux Foundation, depending on what Google wants to do. And hopefully they'll come. But there's a lot of different pieces and parts in play still. So I thought I would pause and let Stephen add in any feedback that he wanted to add based on this, my assessment, and if I'm correct in their interest in becoming a graduated project.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. V1 is extremely stable. There is a healthy community of maintainers that are making sure that as keeping the dependencies up to date, more or less. Every once in a while, something comes in that, for example, the Credo project wants in the wrapper for non-creds, and that gets done. So those types of things are continuing and has a healthy community around it. There's a lot of people, a lot of projects, a lot of initiatives using an on-creds V1 exactly as it is, and it's not going to evolve in any significant way. It's just going to continue to be maintained, and that is there. V2 is, an incredibly impressive piece of work, but it's before its time, and it is has taken an opinionated pass, although a flexible one. So an on-creds V2 adds new features, zero knowledge proof features on top of an on-creds. It implements a pluggable signature scheme, which is extremely impressive. So it can be used right now with two underlying anonymous credentials mechanisms, PF signatures and BBS signatures. I would note that when BBS was added, it was a really fast task. The developer, Mike Lauder, implemented it in like a week or two. So it's very impressive that it has, advanced features in zero knowledge, and is able to take advantage of newer and modern schemes, which is important. However, there is pretty much we need to do the basics and get get lots of underlying things done in zero knowledge that is basically preventing any real solutions from coming forward right now. ZK, Longfellow ZK, which uses a very different approach from BBS, so would be quite different from an on-creds V2, is making progress and is impressive. And so there's that cadre of people working on that, and then expansions of that. But it's a lot less general purpose, and as I say, very different from the non-creds/BBS approach to anonymous credentials. And then there's all of the work around BBS that's going on in Europe, in Japan, in the United States, all of which are kind of disparate and not in collaboration, which is frustrating for me. I'd like to see a common approach to doing it. So what that leaves is really not a lot of progress being made as to getting this out in the world, with the exception of Longfellow. But the BBS is really would give us that generalized and most flexible way to do it. But it's really competing with those that kind of ignore unlinkability, which is the straight ISO or FDJOTs, and then Longfellow, which says, well, we'll take ISO MDL as is, and we'll put a custom piece between the holder and the verifier to allow for unlinkability, which is a super good and and power to them that getting that going. So that's the sort of the state of that world. And as a result of it, as impressive as an on-creds V2 is, there really has not been uptake in very many people really running forward with it. And so it is essentially stalled. So that's the wrap up. I'd be happy to see an on-creds V1 or an on-creds in general move to graduation. But on the understanding that there really isn't a lot of need to move it forward, to contribute to it. It's just keeping the on-creds V1 going. And then, once the ZK scene settles, seeing if an on-creds V2 is a useful part of that, and who wants to contribute to it.
Does anyone have any questions on this topic? And I'm sure people will have to listen to the video, but I can see Marcus's hands up.
Yeah, so maybe I'm missing some details here. Also, I also unfortunately had not yet the time to look into this in more detail. But so what I understood is, I know creds V1 super stable, used by many people, it's a great thing. However, there's the opportunity to move forward without, let's say, disrupting whatever exists in V1. Looking into more exciting research thingies. However, as I understood, the work in V2 is basically right now stale because there is so much going on. People cannot really decide on what particular technology to move forward. Is this the right understanding?
Yeah, and
okay.
as a result, no one has stepped forward to say, hey, let's take this work and move it forward. So there's really no contributors to it. But I'd love to see LFDT help in moving forward with zero knowledge in trying to get that collaboration going. I mean, LFDT, even with the first person project, has its own path on doing zero knowledge. So even within LFDT, there's kind of separate work going on that don't overlap at all. So, and that's the challenging part for me personally is it would be really helpful if we had this kind of capability out there, and if there are, the message I've got for you to take back to your organizations and so on is it really could use a nudge to figure out how to get this work to come together.
Right,
Make
understand.
Longfellow more expansive, move BBS forward, which is certainly the way W3C and those IETF is working towards, but kind of slowly.
Okay, so could you another question on that, because you were phrasing it in a way that so since V1 is kind of stable, it's maintained, people are still, it's used by many people are still maintaining it, great. But so is this V1 V2 kind of split in the community, because you were phrasing it in order to graduate V1 but not V2? In my understanding, well, undergrads is just one project. Doesn't matter if there is a V1 branch and a V2 branch. It doesn't matter so much.
V2 was an initiative by a small group. And it's not a split per se. It's just that those using V1 don't see any need to go to V2. It really is a fully breaking change. And with all of the other ZK things going on in various communities, there's no motivation to say, oh, we're going to jump on that one. And that's the big thing everywhere, is there's almost no motivation to jump on any of them, regardless of the value to the world that this type of technology provides.
Okay. But is there a common, let's say, agreement within the undergrads community that assume at some point in future V2 is finalized and ready and has the same stability as V1, that it eventually will replace V1 because it's
No.
faster, it's new, or whatever?
No. So I could even see that people just say, who cares about unlinkability? Who cares about the privacy capabilities that it's provided? Let's just go ahead and give up. That's my biggest fear is, every verifier gets the same unique identifier for every person so that they can correlate all their data across and people just accept that. That's my fear.
I think what it shows, Marcus is, and everybody else, is that it's still a long way to go to get ZKP adoption, and to see a clear winner out there for how it's going. As much as we'd like to say what we're doing here in the Linux Foundation is going to be the clear winner, there are a number of other competitors out there, and everybody's just waiting to see where this falls out. And so, I think this is reading into their annual report and then looking at the landscape. That it's sort of a wise decision to maybe put the AnonCreds V2 project on initiative on hold, and just keep moving forward and supporting the folks that are using AnonCreds V2, V1 rather.
V1, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it might have even been a misnomer to call it V2. So maybe we'll come up with something different in the future when the future is revealed.
Yeah, two other points. Because of how complete and easy AnonCreds V1 is and has been, there was and continues to be a lot of use of it. So it's not like people don't want to use ZK. It's just they're focused on their own issues to do with their wallet. If they could get ZKP as easily as they get it with AnonCred, they'd be delighted. And I think we wouldn't have the issue. The problem was that, AnonCreds proved that it could work, but people didn't want to go beyond that. BBS became that'll be the next way. That's how we're going to go, but it hasn't made the progress that was expected.
Yeah. So we've got work to do, not just for these guys, but for other aspects of the LFDT projects too, to keep moving it forward and seeing where it's going and making sure we have these conversations. So thanks, Stephen, for joining. Is there any other questions here? So, and maybe Rai or David can say, if the AnonCreds folks want to go to graduated, what's the next step for them besides this annual review, which I'll submit my review on and approve it?
I mean, they can submit a proposal. I mean, just like Hyro submitted a graduation proposal near the end of last year. I mean, there's that process they could follow.
Yeah. So, Stephen, if you want to do that, let me know, and I can give you a hand with that.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening to us mutter on about this.
All right, then we go with Matt on the Indy.
Sure. Thanks, Marcus. Just share my screen.
You want to share your screen? I can stop if you want.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you have it there. Perfect. No, that's useful. I think the easiest thing is probably if you show that in. So this is the annual report. What I've done is actually, if you go to the other PR that's in draft, Jessica, which is number. Now the number has escaped me. 296.
Sorry, am I in the wrong report?
So you're not, but what I've done is I've done a review on top of this PR, so if you look at 296 rather than 284, then I think people can add comments to 284 as they would normally. And this kind of puts it all in one place. So if you go to files change for this, this is based on that PR. So I will update it once the original annual report is in. And then if you go to view this, yeah. So yeah, so the top kind of 2/3 of this document is the report that the indie maintainers have submitted. And then if you go down to about the bottom third, Jessica, keep going down, there'll be a TAC. I think actually
I
might be
think I
better
might
instead of
bust it
this.
already.
I'm finding this view a little unclear. If you do the view file option, maybe that's easier. If you go to view file on the three dots on the top right, just under the, if you go all the way, if you go to the three little dots top right of your screen, just
The three
underneath submit
little.
review, just underneath submit review, three dots, and then view file. Yeah, that looks a little clearer on my screen, I
Oh,
think.
sorry.
No,
Okay,
no
yeah, that
problem. There
looks
we are.
better.
There we go. Okay. So then, yeah, if you go down to about 2/3 of the way down, keep going down, keep going down, keep going down a little bit. Stop there. Perfect. It says up a little bit. There's the section that starts uh, indie annual review, I think. Up a little. Keep going up. Keep going
Oh,
up.
this
There
one.
we go. There we go. There we are. Perfect. Thanks. So yeah. So this, yeah, the way I did this is I read through the report and then I thought it easiest to kind of read everything and show everything in one place. I've created a draft PR based on that, where I've put kind of what I've found as I've gone through it. It's still in draft, and what I haven't yet done is reach out to the maintainers with kind of a pointer to this PR for them to have a look at our review and give their feedback. Um, so generally, it's a pretty good annual report, and generally it seems to be quite an active project. Um, I think I'm right in saying that was Char one of the maintainers who I think maybe has moved on since, although she was quite actively, I think, involved in the community calls up until right at the end, towards the end of the year. So the project still clearly has quite a lot of discussion on Discord, and it has pretty well documented, minuted contributor calls going on, certainly right up to the end of the year. Um, Generally speaking, it gets pretty good LFX Insights score. It's not always clear to me because it's quite a lot of repos for Indie. So there's Indie Node and Indie, is it VDR? And then Indie Besu is one of the big kind of areas of development for Indie. So LFX Insights gives a couple of warnings, one around the number of orgs that provide most of the contributors, and one around the number of contributors providing most of the commits. I don't think that's particularly out of keeping with quite a lot of other LFDT projects, particularly. As is always the case for a lot of projects, I think finding more committers and maintainers is always a great aim, but I don't think is particularly concerning here. If you scroll down a little bit just so we can see the progress and releases section, Jessica. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the focus seemed to be on Indie Besu over 2025. The Indie node, the original Indie node repo, hasn't had any movement during 2025. No releases. There has been this aim to get it up to Ubuntu 22. I think that was one of the main aims set out at the beginning of the year. That does seem to still be ongoing. Uh, there have been releases in the other repos. Generally, I haven't kind of covered them all. But like I say, Indie Bessie seems to be the one that's getting the most traction. And there have been releases elsewhere showing kind of fairly regular cadence of releases and fixes. Um, one of the yeah, one of the goals, the upgrade to Indy Node to Ubuntu 22 hasn't kind of been closed out. It doesn't look like it's imminent. So that's obviously something that they've highlighted as being something they'd like to close out in the first half of the year. One of the things that I particularly have covered in the review is the OpenSSF status for the project. It does have some fairly kind of concerning areas. I've listed a few here. Now, I think as the report shows from the maintainers, to an extent, it's somewhat of a new scorecard for the repos to have applied to them. That said, I think things like the scores here, the 0 out of 10s here, for vulnerabilities, particularly for just being well maintained, signed releases, and so on, are things that I think certainly the LFDT has some must have requirements on some of those numbers, which I think clearly at the moment the project wouldn't be meeting. And it's currently a graduated project, so as a graduated project, it would certainly be expected to meet. I think at least 9s for some of these, in some cases 10s and so on. So that was one of the main areas that stood out for me as something to highlight to the TAC, and give the opportunity to the project maintainers to kind of give their feedback on that. And then I've got a recommendation in a minute. I'll talk about in that regard. Excuse me. So the project has moved to Hyperledger Indy, which is really successful because there's a lot of work involved there. Not all projects have managed to kind of complete that org change yet, so that's a real positive. Generally speaking, a lot of the other checks and policies and requirements Indy has got in place, with a kind of a few discrepancies. Again, I think largely down to having multiple repos. It's often hard to apply all of those to all the repos and have them all consistent. So there were a few things that I've highlighted there, which I think are the kind of things that we'd suggest maintainers go in and maybe look at over the course of the year to partly to make their own lives easier. In some cases, like things like the security file, where it's a copy and paste and it's not tiny. It's it's quite easy for that to get out of step in one or two of the repos. So potentially having one and having the other ones reference that might be a way to make their lives easier, and so on. Things like the adopters file would be really valuable, I think, and there isn't an adopters file there just for potential project users to understand some of its use cases. So yeah, that is that brings us down to the recommendations. I think what I've highlighted there is that I think it is difficult for a graduated project to continue to have real outlier low numbers for some of those OpenSSF scores. It is pretty stable, and they have already listed that in the aims for 2026. But I do think it's worth some discussion, and whether or not that is fine to just leave as an aim for 2026, or whether it needs kind of closer attention going forward. But yeah, so that was that was where I got to with the review. We don't have any of the maintainers on this call. And Kevin was the secondary. I had trouble getting hold of Kevin to kind of talk some of this through, but he may have some thoughts on it as well on the next call. Any thoughts? Or yeah, go for it, Marcus.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for presenting this. Isn't Stephen, aren't you also a maintainer in one of those projects still?
Yes, I hung around because I am involved in indie as well, not as much as a non-cred and other projects, but definitely involved in indie. So can answer question.
Oh, excellent.
Right.
Thanks, Stephen.
So I'm kind of worried a little bit with the scorecard situation, because I mean the two scorecards linked in the report, they basically show, I think for one, so one scorecard says there are 0 commits in the last 90 days, and for the other project 2 commits in 90 days. I mean, how many project or repositories do we have there where there is some activity then going on, which should be maybe tracked differently here?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not shocked there is not much. It, quite frankly, is quite like an on-pres, which is people are using it. Um, uh, Obviously, it doesn't include the indie Besu work because clearly there has been significantly more activity there. But the basic ones for Hyperledger Indy itself have not had a lot of activity just because people have them deployed, have them in use, and they're working, and so they don't spend as much time. We're BC Gov, for example, is has a deployed instance using it, and things are there, but focus is on transitioning to the WebVH as the new anchor for future credentials. So there's less concern. I'm surprised on things like the vulnerabilities, that there's nothing there. I'm pretty surprised, but I don't know how these scorecards are calculated, so I can't speak to what they're saying.
I mean, yeah, this is the point. I mean, I think every project has dependabot more or less available, which basically floods every project, I believe, with vulnerability issues at some point. And I mean, even if you have a small little project, I think every week you can create one PR to bump any dependency in order to close one of those. So I think I don't understand enough of the repository or of the project structure from a technical point of view to understand, okay, how updates need to be applied and integrated in order to say, okay, this is a maintained project. But yeah, so I mean, this basically concerns me here.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we should definitely, I mean, Matthew, in your review, stress this fact, and I mean, ask, okay, where is the activity going on? I mean, can we see the scorecards, for instance, for those other mentioned sub-project or repositories? And in order to, I mean, get a better understanding what's going on there, is this still an active maintained project or not?
Yeah, and yeah, forgive me, Stephen, if you just mentioned this, but yeah, am I right in saying so? Is Indie Besu where the bulk of the development effort currently goes in Indie?
There's certainly a lot going on there. Yeah, I mean, Indy's been deployed for quite a long time in a number of places, and it more or less is stable. But yeah, there's not much happening with it.
Yeah, yeah, I guess certainly, it feels to me like there's two kind of issues at play here. Partly, one is I think some projects evolve their direction, and so they'll end up with a number of repos. Some of those will become kind of slightly more stabilized and less active, and active development will maybe move in another direction and fall under another repo under that org. And I think that is something that for the TAC to consider more generally about do a number of repos cause the entire encompassing project to be downgraded because it's only a subset of them that are really actively being worked and actively being kept up to date with CVE patches and so on. I think that is something for the TAC to consider, and how a kind of a useful, valid, fair assessment of a project as a whole can be made when you do have quite a lot of projects where you have this compartmentalization of different components under different repos, and they won't all have the same amount of activity at the same time. So that, I think, is a standalone topic for the TAC more generally. I do think, yeah, for a project that is, pretty established and does have some kind of long running installations and users, I think in some respects that's kind of valid that you don't have huge new functional enhancements, but I think it's those cases where CVE patching and a lot of the software security side of things, that these OpenSSF scores would give a user comfort and confidence that the code they're running is kind of safe and secure and suitable for production use. I think that comes from some of those scores, and so the absence of those in quite a lot of places is kind of troubling, even when it's stabilized and maybe running in a lot of places. But yeah.
I'll certainly take that back to the indie contributors, and we'll have that discussion. This is the first time I've seen the Open SSF scorecard data like that, and so I'm
Yeah, of
not fully
course.
up to date on what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. And I think also, obviously, this review, has only first kind of been shown today, and I haven't yet made an effort to reach out to the maintainers just to get their kind of views on it. So by all means, take that back, and I'll pop something onto one of the indie channels on Discord if I haven't already, just
Yeah.
to say that I'd welcome people to come and have a read and add some comments.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Stephen.
All right. Well, I think then, yeah, Matt, as you said, you reach out. So we still have 9 minutes. I don't think that we have yet another report to discuss. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I'm not wrong. Great.
You're not
So
wrong.
awesome. I think then, if there is not anything else you would like to put on our remaining 8 minutes on the agenda.
I did want to point out that Bezu has one repo left. Once they get their release done, they will be completely moved to Bezu ETH. And then we need to come up with a plan to move Firefly, because I haven't been able to get anyone to talk about planning moving the Firefly stuff to a new org. So that's the next one.
Great. Thanks, Rye. All right. Then I would say that's it for today. I wish everyone listening to this recording a lot of fun. Well, I should have said this in the beginning, but in the end. All right. Thanks a lot. Then talk to you next week again.
Thanks, Marcus.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.